My girlfriend told me to make sure my parents don't go to our wedding because they don't fit our status. So the next day, I canceled a couple of invitations, my mother-in-law's and my girlfriend's. I will never forget the day my future wife, smiling and with a mocking face, said to me, "Gao, make sure your parents don't go to our wedding. They are poor and don't fit our status." That day, my blood boiled, but I didn't say anything. I had a better plan. But before I share that, let me give you some context. When I was a child, my parents were poor, the kind that fights daily so hunger doesn't win the battle. We lived in a humble neighborhood in a small adobe house with a metal roof that turned into an oven in the summer and leaked in the winter. There were no luxuries, not even the basics. I remember that many nights, dinner was just a plate of beans with tortillas, and if we were lucky, a piece of cheese that my mom saved like it was gold. But they never complained. Dad would say, "As long as we're together, everything else will be fine." And Mom would nod, stroking my hair, telling me to eat slowly so I would feel fuller. They were my whole world. My dad, Jose, was a tall, thin man with skin weathered by the sun. He worked wherever he could. Sometimes he would carry bags at the market, other times he helped a neighbor with construction. My mom, Rosa, was short, with small but strong hands. She washed other people's clothes, sold tamales on the corner, or collected cans to sell for a few pesos. They didn't have an education, they could barely read and write. But they had something worth more than any degree: heart. Everything they did for me. My parents skipped meals so I would have something on my plate. Once, when I had a high fever and there wasn't money for medicine, my dad walked 3 hours to the neighboring town to borrow from a friend. He returned with a bottle of cough syrup and a bag of oranges someone had given him. "This will make you better, champ," he said, and stayed awake all night with my mom, making sure my fever went down. They never got married, not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't afford it. A wedding, even a simple one, cost money they didn't have. Dad had promised Mom a white dress and a celebration with music, but life didn't give them that chance. "One day I will," he used to say to her, and she would smile as if she believed him. When I finished high school, they wanted me to continue studying, but there was no money for university. So at 16, I started working at a small store in the neighborhood, stocking shelves and carrying boxes. That's where everything began. The store's owner, Don Miguel, was an older man who took a liking to me. He said I had spark and knew how to treat people. He taught me how to run the business, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to serve customers, and much more. When I turned 19, Don Miguel decided to shut down the store and move with his daughter to another city. Before he left, he said to me, "This place is yours if you want it. I'll let it go cheap because I know you will make it grow." So, with my savings and my parents' help, I made the decision to do it. It wasn't easy, but I succeeded. I started small, with the basics: rice, beans, soap, and then I began to grow. By the time I was 22, that little corner store had turned into a well-known supermarket in the city where everyone came to shop. Suddenly, I realized we were no longer poor. I, the son of Jose and Rosa, had money in the bank, several million to buy a house, a car, and give my parents something they had never had: peace of mind. I moved my parents into a large house with real floors and a roof that didn't leak. I bought them new clothes, a big TV, a stove that didn't require firewood. But they didn't change. They remained the same humble, kind, grateful people. Dad still carved wood in his spare time, and Mom still cooked beans as if nothing had changed. "We don't need more, son. As long as you're okay, we've already won," they would tell me, and I felt like the luckiest man in the world. Until I met Tatiana. It was at a party of a mutual friend. I was 23 when she appeared like a movie star, tall, with long, shiny hair, and green eyes that captivated you. She was beautiful, yes, but she also knew how to move and talk. That night, she told me she liked my energy, and that I was different. I later learned that she wasn't from a wealthy family. She came from a normal family, one that didn't have much but didn't go hungry either. She told me about her life and her dreams of getting ahead, and I shared my story, how I built everything I had from scratch. She seemed interested, and I felt good with her. Everything seemed perfect. We started dating, and after a while, we became a couple. We would go out to dinner, drive around in my car, and she always found ways to make me laugh, telling me things like, "You're different from others. You have something special." Having grown up feeling invisible in a neighborhood where no one expected much of me, those words melted my heart. I wanted to give her the best, to make her feel that with me, she would never lack anything. So, I invited her into my world to meet the people who mattered most to me, my parents. When Tatiana arrived, she was wearing a tight dress and high heels that echoed on the marble floor. She looked beautiful, but as soon as she walked in, her eyes landed on my parents. She wrinkled her nose as if something stank, and her smile twisted into a grimace of disdain. Mom greeted her with her usual warmth, saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you came, sweetheart. Come in, sit down. Can I get you some coffee or a soda?" With her hands trembling but her heart wide open. Dad stood up, clumsily adjusting his oversized shirt, and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Tatiana. My son has spoken a lot about you," he said with a humble smile. She barely gave them her fingertips, quickly withdrawing them and wiping her hands on her dress, saying a flat hello that sounded disinterested. She sat down on the leather couch, crossed her legs, and looked around, not with admiration for the house, but with contempt for my parents. "No thanks, I'm fine," she said, curtly when Mom insisted on the coffee. The afternoon was tense. Mom tried to talk to her like always, asking sweetly, "Where are you from, Mia? What do you like to do?" While putting a plate of tortillas on the table, still wrapped in an old napkin she had been using for years. Tatiana looked at her like she was a bug and replied dryly, "Nothing special from here," then added, "You always sound like this. This house is nice, but they look like they came from a ranch." She said it with a cruel chuckle, as if it were a private joke. Mom laughed nervously and said, "Well, yes, Mija. We are simple." Tatiana raised an eyebrow and murmured, "Simple is an understatement." Dad tried to get closer, showing her a small piece of wood he was carving. "Look, I make these things, it's a hobby," he said timidly. She looked him up and down, from his poorly fitting shirt to his worn-out shoes, then said, "How exotic. It seems you don't know how to spend your son's money." I tried to smooth things over by explaining how I bought the house for them, but she didn't listen. When we left, she got into the car, adjusting her hair, and said, "Seriously, your parents, what simple people. They smell like the countryside." She said it with a twisted smile as if expecting me to agree. I felt a pang in my chest but didn't say anything. I thought it was a one-time thing and that she might come to like them over time. I was wrong. After that, Tatiana made it clear she was repulsed by my parents. She knew everything they had, the house, the clothes, the food, came from me, and that made her see them as parasites. "Let's go out alone again. I can't stand seeing them in those outfits," she would say, scrunching her face. One Christmas, Mom gifted Tatiana a tablecloth she had embroidered by hand. It was beautiful, with red and green flowers that took her weeks to make. "I did this thinking of you, Mija, so you have something nice for your home," she said, her eyes shining. Tatiana took it, glanced at it for a second, and said, "Oh, thanks, but I don't know if I'll use it. It's not my style." She set it aside as if it were trash, and Mom fell silent, her hands tightening in her lap. Dad looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that was not just sadness, but disappointment. But like a fool, I did nothing. I didn't want Tatiana to get angry. I didn't want to lose her. Over time, I saw that Tatiana hated them for who they were, humble, marked by poverty. Even if I provided everything, she didn't see their love, only their rough hands, their mismatched clothes, their simple ways. And me, blinded and in love, let her trample over them. Time passed, and one night, under the lights of an expensive restaurant she chose, I took out the ring I had bought and said, "Tatiana, will you marry me?" My heart was in my throat. She smiled in that way that made me tremble and said, "Yes, of course." The people around us applauded, and I felt like I was touching the sky. I thought we would finally build something together, that she would understand what my parents meant to me. How wrong I was. 3 days before the wedding, while preparing the plans, she said, "Make sure your parents don't go to our wedding. They don't fit our status. They are poor." She said it without hesitation, with a tone that was half mockery, half order. I stared at her, hoping she was joking, but her cold green eyes were hard. My blood boiled. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me, but I said nothing. I nodded, turned around, and left. That night, I cried. I thought about my parents, everything they did for me, their rough hands, their tired smiles, the love they gave me without asking for anything in return, and about Tatiana, my future wife, and the love I had for her, but also how she had stomped on my parents. It was then that I realized what I had to do. I would no longer be her puppet. The next day, I woke up early and called the wedding planner, a serious guy I had hired because Tatiana wanted something classy. I told him I needed to make a change to the guest list. Take out 2 people, Tatiana and her mother. I said it firmly, even though I was trembling inside. He hesitated for a moment. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes, I'm sure. They are not coming. I'm paying. I decide." I cut him off and hung up before he could argue. Then I took a deep breath and went to see my parents. I told them to come to my wedding, and they agreed. The wedding day arrived. The church was decorated like Tatiana had insisted. White flowers everywhere, expensive candles, a choir that cost a fortune. The guests, my friends, and some of hers, filled the pews. My parents arrived early, nervous but happy. Mom wore a simple dress I had bought her, but with her usual flip-flops. Dad had on the same poorly buttoned shirt and worn-out shoes. I saw them sit at the back, humble as always, and I felt a mix of love and anger. They deserved to be in the front, not hidden away. Then chaos began. Tatiana arrived in a white car, wearing a wedding dress I had paid for, looking like a queen. Her mother, following behind, had a superior look that turned my stomach. But when they tried to enter, the security guards I had given clear instructions to blocked their way. "I'm sorry, you're not on the list," one said firmly. Tatiana turned red. "I'm the bride, you fools! Let me in or I'll have you fired!" she screamed while her mother added, "You don't know who you're messing with!" The guests began to murmur, and I heard everything from inside. I walked to the entrance wearing the suit I had chosen for what was supposed to be my wedding. Tatiana saw me and rushed at me. "What's going on? These guys won't let me in. Fix this now," she yelled with fire in her eyes. I looked at her calm for the first time in years. "There's nothing to fix, Tatiana. There's not going to be a wedding between us. It's over," I said with a voice that didn't tremble. She staggered back as if I had hit her. "You're crazy! You can't do this to me!" she yelled while her mother chimed in. "You ungrateful brat! My daughter deserves better than you and your dirty parents." That's when I exploded. "My parents are dirty? They are worth 1,000 times more than you. They gave me everything. They worked hard for me while you, Tatiana, only dedicated yourself to despising them, treating them poorly, and insulting them. Did you really think I would kick them out of the wedding? You know what? I don't want you near me or them ever again," I said, pointing at her. Tatiana literally collapsed to her knees in her white dress, dragging it along the floor, and began to cry. "No, please, I love you. Don't do this to me," she begged, her tears looking more like rage than sadness. Her mother pulled her by the arm, screaming insults, but I no longer listened. I turned and entered the church. The guests were in shock, but I didn't care. I walked to the altar where the priest was waiting, confused. I made a sign for my parents to come to the front. They looked at each other, puzzled, but approached, trembling. I knelt in front of them, tears in my eyes. "Dad, Mom, you never had a wedding because there was no money, but today, this is for you. I want you to get married here now, as you always deserved," I said with a cracked voice. Mom covered her mouth, crying. Dad put a hand on my shoulder with watery eyes. "Son, what are you saying?" he murmured. "I'm saying that I love you, and no one will trample on you ever again. Please let me give you this," I replied. After a moment of doubt, the priest smiled and said, "Well, if they want to." My parents looked at each other, and Mom nodded with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "Yes, Jose, let's get married," she whispered. The ceremony was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Mom in her flip-flops and simple dress, and Dad in his poorly buttoned shirt held hands in front of the altar. The priest spoke, and they promised each other eternal love, and when they said, "I do," the guests applauded, some crying. I stood by their side with a full heart. Tatiana and her mother had left defeated, but that didn't matter anymore. My parents, who had given me everything, were having their moment, and I made it possible. When they left the church, holding hands, Mom hugged me so tightly I thought I would suffocate. "Thank you, son. I never thought I would have this," she said between sobs. Dad gave me a pat on the back. He didn't need words. His eyes said it all. That night, we had a simple party at home with beans and tortillas, the way they liked it, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Tatiana tried to call me afterward, sent me messages, but I didn't respond. I was no longer her toy. My parents were my priority, and no one would underestimate them again. Update 1. Hello. Thank you to everyone who has supported me for the decision I made. It has been 3 months since the day of the wedding, or better yet, since the day my parents finally had the wedding they always deserved. I still smile when I think about it. Mom in her worn flip-flops and Dad in his poorly buttoned shirt, hand in hand at the altar, with tears of happiness worth more than all the gold in the world. That image is etched in my memory, and every time I recall it, I feel I did the right thing. But not everything has been easy since then. Tatiana didn't give up as quickly as I expected. A week after I left her at the church entrance, she began bombarding me with messages. At first, they were insults like, "You're an idiot. You will regret this. You don't know what you've lost. Your parents are just a bunch of poor losers." I read them and deleted them without responding. But then her tone changed. She started writing me things like, "Please forgive me. I was foolish. I know I was wrong about your parents. I won't do it again, I promise. Give me another chance. I love you." Some days she would send me 10 messages in a row with promises and pleas. Once, she even called me crying, saying she had changed and now understood how important my parents were to me. I heard her trembling voice through the speaker, but I didn't answer. I hung up and blocked her number. It wasn't just that I didn't believe her. Honestly, I didn't believe a word. It was that I no longer wanted her in my life. Tatiana had shown me who she truly was, and there was no going back. My parents deserved respect, and I deserved someone who saw them the way I did, like giants, not like trash. So I stopped reading her messages. I stopped thinking about her. To me, Tatiana was the past, a mistake that taught me to never betray myself or my own. Life went on. The supermarket kept growing, and I focused on working and being with my parents. They were happier than ever after their wedding. They became inseparable, as if they were truly newlyweds. Mom started embroidering more tablecloths, but now for herself and Dad, and proudly laid them out on the big table at home. Dad kept carving wood and even made a frame for their wedding photo, which now hangs in the living room. "Look, son, now we are a real husband and wife," Mom said, laughing, and Dad nodded with that calm smile of his. Seeing them like that filled my heart with peace. And then, 2 months ago, I met Laura. It was at the supermarket on an ordinary day. She is in charge of inventory. A girl who had been working there for months but with whom I had never talked much. That day I saw her checking some boxes in the storeroom with a notebook in hand and her hair tied back in a neat ponytail. I approached to ask her something about the stock and we ended up chatting. I'm not sure how it happened, but suddenly we were laughing about something silly and her brown eyes crinkled in a way that made me want to keep seeing her. Laura is different. She doesn't have Tatiana's pretense. She doesn't try to impress anyone. She's simple, but not in a way that's ashamed of it. She works hard, knows what it means to earn things, and when I told her my story, about my parents, about the wedding, she listened with an attention that I never got from Tatiana. "Your parents sound amazing," she said, and it wasn't just to say it. I saw it when I invited her over one afternoon, a month ago. Laura showed up with a bag of oranges she had bought on the way to share with us. Mom welcomed her with her usual hug, and this time there were no grimaces or disdain. Laura sat with us in the kitchen, had coffee in Mom's chipped cups, and ate tortillas with beans as if it were the most normal thing in the world. When Dad showed her one of his wood carvings, she didn't laugh or look at him strangely. How beautiful. My grandfather also carved wood. I love it, she said, and started asking him questions with genuine interest. Mom even showed her how to embroider for a bit, and the two ended up laughing as if they had known each other for years. That night, when I took her home, Dad said to me, "That girl has a good heart, son." And Mom added, "Yes, and she knows how to care for people." Laura and I have been dating for 2 months now. It's not long, but everything looks good. There's no rush, no drama. We go eat tacos at the corner, stroll through the park, and sometimes we hang out at my parents' house, watching TV or playing cards. Today, while I'm writing this, I'm in the living room of the house. My parents are in the kitchen, laughing over something Dad said. Laura is coming over in a bit. She said she would bring a cake to celebrate that the supermarket had its best month. I look around and think about everything I've been through. The poverty, the effort, my parents' sacrifices, Tatiana's mistake. And now this. A peaceful life with people worth being with. I don't need more.